You ever been that kid? The one who barely spoke, but somehow they were always the smartest in the room? You saw stuff others missed, felt stuff they couldn't even imagine. And when you finally did speak, people listened up because they realized you weren't just quiet, you were downright dangerous. INFJs, they don't need to shout to be heard. You've always been the quiet one in the room, and people often look right past you. But here's the kicker. The quieter you are, the more you see. While everyone else is flapping their gums, you're observing. You know who's lying. You know who's struggling. You know when people are faking it. Your silence ain't weakness. It's your superpower. You're holding the truth in your back pocket, waiting for the right time to drop it like a bomb. And when you do, believe me, it hits harder than anyone expects. People ignore the quiet ones, but INFJs, they're always the ones who see what everyone else misses. That's why you've always been the one to call out the BS in a room, even when you were just a kid. Curious to know more, huh? All right, let's get this show on the road. First thing first, you've been compared by your sibling or parent. Let's be real for a second. How many times have you been compared to someone else? A sibling, a cousin, a friend, and every time, it felt like you just didn't measure up. You were the quiet one, the serious one, the deep thinker. But no one told you this was actually your strength. You thought you were the problem. Turns out, you were the solution. Growing up, the comparisons were relentless. No matter what you did, you couldn't seem to escape the shadow of someone else. Maybe it was your sibling, who seemed to have everything handed to them. Maybe it was that one friend who was always loud, always the center of attention. And you? You were the one who observed, the one who never quite fit into the mold. People didn't understand you. Your family didn't understand you. You probably got told that you were too quiet or too intense, while everyone else seemed to have it figured out. But here's the thing, those comparisons, they were the beginning of your awakening. You weren't meant to fit in with everyone else. INFJs don't follow the crowd. We've never been the mainstream type, and that's why the comparisons never made sense. The reason you were always held to a higher standard, it wasn't because you were flawed. It was because you were built for something different. Your depth, your introspection, and your ability to see the world in a way most others can't, that was always your superpower. The fact that they tried to compare you to others only showed that they didn't get it. They didn't realize that your strength didn't lie in conformity. It lay in your individuality. You don't need to be loud or perfect to make an impact. That quiet intensity you've always carried is the one thing that will set you apart in this world. So stop measuring yourself against the ones who don't understand you. The comparisons are irrelevant. Your path has always been uniquely yours, and that's exactly how it's supposed to be. All right, secondly, you observed the adults and realized they weren't perfect. While your friends were idolizing adults, you were quietly watching them, and one day it hit you. Wait, they don't have it all figured out. You knew it before anyone else did, and that realization, it changed everything. As a kid, you were always in the background, watching the adults around you. They seemed like they had it all together, like they had the answers to everything. But deep down, you could feel something wasn't right. You saw through the facades. You noticed the cracks in their perfect lives, the way their smiles didn't always match the weight in their eyes. You could see the stress hidden beneath their polished exterior, the insecurities they were too proud to show. While others were busy looking up to these authority figures, you realized they were just people. Most kids don't question their parents or teachers. They see them as the ones who know everything, and they trust them without hesitation. But you were different. You observed, you listened, you saw the lies they told themselves to get by. And when you realized that the adults you looked up to were just winging it, pretending to have it all under control, you couldn't unsee it. You realized that perfection wasn't the goal, and the people who were supposed to guide you were just figuring things out as they went. This wasn't a curse, it was a blessing. Because unlike your peers, you didn't buy into the illusion that everyone had it figured out. You saw the cracks in the system and understood that there was no one perfect. That's why you never followed the crowd. You knew, even as a kid, that you had to find your own way. The truth is, you were building your own foundation, one that wasn't based on pretending to have all the answers, but on accepting that imperfection is part of the journey. And once you saw that, Nothing could ever fool you again. Moving to point number 3, you were a secret rebel and a hidden leader. You never wore the rebel badge, but you've always been one. You didn't stir the pot for attention, but you didn't follow the rules either. You led in silence, and people followed without even realizing it. As a kid, you never needed to scream, "I'm in charge!" You didn't wear a crown or wave a flag. You were never the loudest or the most outgoing. But you sure as hell were the one everyone turned to when things got serious. You've always had this quiet, magnetic power that others couldn't ignore, even when you weren't trying to stand out. While the world is busy following the rules, you were the one quietly questioning them. You weren't rebellious for the sake of chaos. You saw the cracks in the system and knew there was a better way. You understood that true leadership doesn't come from dominating the conversation. It comes from understanding the conversation, stepping back, and making the right moves when it counts. You weren't the one throwing fits or challenging authority for drama. You were the quiet force that changed things from behind the scenes. You led by example. When others were busy following the crowd, you were taking your own path, even if it meant going alone. And here's the thing, people saw it. They saw your conviction, your calm confidence, and your ability to stand firm in your beliefs, no matter how uncomfortable it made them. It wasn't about pushing your way to the front, it was about knowing that when the time came, your voice would carry the most weight. You didn't need to disrupt things to create change. In fact, your leadership was so subtle, it felt like a secret. You've probably been underestimated your whole life because you don't fit the typical leader mold. But that's the thing, you don't need to fit the mold. You were born to break it. And when people realized that you weren't just following the rules, you were quietly rewriting them, they started to follow you. Fourthly, you listened more than you spoke and learned everyone's secrets. While everyone else was busy talking, you sat back, listened, and gathered more secrets than they'll ever know. You weren't just hearing words, you were reading between the lines. And that's how you saw through it all. You're not the type to dominate a conversation, and people never quite understood that about you. They assumed you just didn't have much to say. But the truth is, you were too busy observing. INFJs don't need to talk to understand people. In fact, it's often in silence where we learn the most. You listen carefully, not just to the words, but to the pauses, the hesitations, the body language, and the little things people didn't even realize they were revealing. While others were busy spilling their thoughts, you were gathering pieces of their story. You understood what people weren't saying, and that made you a master of reading between the lines. People can't hide from you, not because you're stalking them or prying, but because you have this unique ability to feel the truth under all the noise. You could hear someone's insecurity in their voice, see their hidden desires in their eyes, and sense their unspoken fears in their body language. And while everyone else was talking about themselves, you were quietly storing up all their secrets. But here's the kicker. You didn't use these insights to manipulate or control. You understood, and that's what makes you different from everyone else. You didn't need to gossip to feel powerful. The power was in knowing. And because of this, people often felt safe with you. They'd spill their deepest thoughts and confessions without even realizing they were doing it. You could see through their walls before they even built them. You've always been the one who knows what's really going on behind closed doors. And you've probably been burdened by that truth more times than you care to admit. But here's the thing, you didn't need to speak to have power. Your quiet presence, your understanding of the unspoken, made you far more influential than anyone realized. People trusted you with their truths because they felt seen by you in a way no one else did. Fifthly, you knew which people weren't what they seemed. You've always had this gift, or maybe it's a curse, of knowing when someone wasn't being real with you. While everyone else saw a shiny exterior, you could sense the cracks beneath the surface. You just knew. There's something about you that sees through people's masks. While others might get swept up by someone's charm or flashy appearance, you're the one who's quietly scanning, analyzing, and absorbing every little detail. INFJs have this rare ability to pick up on the energy people give off. It's not just about what they say or how they look. It's the subtleties, the way they move, the way they avoid eye contact, or how their words don't quite line up with their actions. You can tell when someone's pretending to be something they're not. As a kid, this probably made you feel like you were always one step ahead of your peers. While they were getting close to people based on surface-level connections, you were already distancing yourself, sensing that something wasn't right. You felt the difference between someone who was being real and someone who was just playing a part. It wasn't judgment, it was intuition, and it was always spot on. But it wasn't just about spotting fakes. It was about protecting yourself. You knew, instinctively, that you couldn't trust someone who didn't match their energy. You weren't going to get caught up in their lies or false personas. People who were too good to be true were usually hiding something, and you could always sense it. Maybe they didn't know it, or maybe they just didn't care, but you saw them, and that made you more cautious than most. This isn't just a small thing. This ability to read people goes deeper than most realize. It's a survival skill, a defense mechanism. You had to be able to spot the hidden agendas, the lies, the manipulations, because if you didn't, you would have been vulnerable. But instead, you became the person who saw through it all, keeping yourself safe and one step ahead of the game. But it's also why, as you grew older, you found yourself trusting fewer people. The more you saw, the more you realized that most people were playing roles, hiding behind their facades. You just couldn't unsee it. And while everyone else was caught up in surface-level friendships, you knew deep down that true connection was something much harder to find. Sixthly, you made people nervous without trying. Ever walked into a room and felt the tension rise? You weren't even trying, but somehow your presence made everyone a little uncomfortable. Why? Because you don't just walk into a space, you read it. So there's something about the way you carry yourself. You don't need to speak a word, yet people around you start shifting uncomfortably. Why? Because your silence does something to them that they can't quite explain. INFJs don't just exist in a room, they observe it. The moment you step in, you can feel the dynamics, the unspoken energy, the secrets floating around. And that alone has a way of making people uneasy. It's not like you're trying to intimidate anyone, but your presence commands attention whether you like it or not. People get nervous even though you haven't said a single word. It's not your fault. Your quiet intensity is just overwhelming. You have this quiet power that makes others feel like you can see right through them. And deep down, that's exactly what they're afraid of. Because most people are used to living behind a mask, hiding parts of themselves that they don't want others to see. And then here you come, the quiet one, and suddenly they feel like you're looking right into their soul. But here's the thing. It's not that you're judging them. It's not that you're trying to make anyone feel bad. You don't want to expose their flaws or make them uncomfortable. You're simply aware of what's happening around you. You notice the things other people ignore, the tension between two friends, the unsaid words in an argument, the loneliness behind someone's eyes. And that makes people nervous because they know you see what's really going on. You're not fooled by the surface-level chatter. This kind of silent influence isn't something you can turn off. You walk into a room and without doing anything, you shift the energy. People might not say it, but they feel it. And while they may try to dismiss you or label you as quiet, what they're really feeling is exposed. They can't hide from you. You see them for who they really are, and that, my friend, is a lot to handle. All right, seventhly, you have a childish face but an adult mind, premature wisdom. You've always looked younger than your age, but the moment you opened your mouth, people were blown away. You've had an old soul for as long as you can remember, and that's always made others uncomfortable. You've probably been mistaken for the innocent one, the sweet one, the one who looks like they have no idea what's going on. And on the outside, yeah, you might have that youthful, almost childlike appearance. But the truth? Your mind has always been decades ahead. People might see your face and think you're naive or inexperienced, but they couldn't be more wrong. Inside, you've always had a wisdom that didn't match your age. While your peers were focused on typical childhood things, you were always thinking about life, purpose, and meaning. You were the kid who asked the big questions, the one who couldn't just accept things at face value. Why? Because your mind was already processing the world in ways others couldn't. You saw the complexities of human nature long before anyone else did, and you were often told, you're too young to understand. But deep down, you knew. You understood more than they realized. This premature wisdom didn't come from just reading books or hearing stories. It came from seeing the truth of the world as it is, not as people wanted it to be. You were never fooled by the illusions others bought into. You knew that life wasn't always fair, that people weren't always honest, and that the world was far more complicated than anyone cared to admit. While other kids were consumed by drama and trivial worries, you were sitting quietly, analyzing, processing, and understanding things on a much deeper level. This made you feel isolated because, let's face it, who wants to be the old soul when everyone else is living in the moment? But that wisdom, your ability to see things for what they really are, has always been your gift, even if it's made you feel out of place. The truth is, people are drawn to you, not because of your youthful appearance, but because of the quiet authority you have. They might not know it, but they can feel it. You know what they don't. And here's the real kicker. That childish face you've always had, it's only ever been an outer layer. Because what's inside? A mind that sees beyond the surface, a wisdom that can change the world, and a soul that's already lived far more than most will ever understand. That's it for this video, and I see you in the next one. Talk soon and be well.